At 5:03 in the morning, Ethan Hale opened his door to find the most powerful woman in Chicago trembling on his doorstep. Sloane Carrington, the CEO who'd never once looked him in the eye at work, stood there in yesterday's clothes, mascara streaked down her face, looking like her entire world had just collapsed. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't explain. She just stood there shaking, and for reasons he'd spend the next year trying to understand, he stepped aside and let her in. That single decision would unravel everything he thought he knew about safety, control, and what it meant to build a life worth living. If you want to see how a 5 a.m. knock can change everything, stay with me until the end. And if this story reaches you, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this one travels. The knock came at 5:03 a.m., and Ethan Hale knew immediately that something was wrong. Not because of the hour. He'd been awake since 4:30, same as every weekday for the past 3 years. Not because knocks at dawn were inherently sinister, but because in the 2 years he'd lived in this modest Chicago apartment building, no one had ever knocked on his door before sunrise. Not neighbors, not delivery drivers. No one. He sat at the kitchen table, coffee halfway to his lips, and stared at the door like it might explain itself. The knock came again. Sharper this time. More insistent. Ethan set the mug down and moved toward the entryway, his mind already running through possibilities. Emergency in the building, wrong apartment, some drunk who couldn't find their own place. He glanced back toward the hallway where Oliver's door remained closed, then unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Sloane Carrington stood in the hallway. For a moment, Ethan's brain refused to process what he was seeing. It was like finding a lion in your living room, so fundamentally out of context that understanding lagged several seconds behind perception. Sloane Carrington, CEO of Carrington Dynamics, the woman whose signature appeared on his paychecks, the woman he'd seen exactly 4 times in person, always from a distance, always surrounded by an entourage of assistants and executives. The woman who existed in an entirely different stratosphere of wealth, power, and influence. She stood there in a wrinkled black dress, heels in one hand, mascara tracked down both cheeks. Her hair, usually pulled into a flawless knot, hung loose and tangled around her shoulders. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. She looked like she'd walked through hell to get here. She stopped, swallowed. Her voice came out hoarse. I didn't know where else to go. Ethan stood frozen, one hand still on the doorframe. His mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe she had the wrong apartment. Maybe this was some bizarre corporate emergency he didn't understand. Maybe he was still asleep and this was the weirdest stress dream he'd had in months. Miss Carrington, he managed. She flinched at the name like he'd slapped her. They stood there in silence, staring at each other across the threshold. Ethan became acutely aware that he was wearing sweatpants and an old Northwestern t-shirt with a coffee stain near the collar. That his hair was doing that thing where it stuck up on one side. That his apartment behind him was clean, but deeply, obviously ordinary. IKEA furniture, dishes in the drying rack, Oliver's backpack on the floor by the couch. Can I? Sloane's voice cracked. She closed her eyes, took a breath. Can I come in? Every rational instinct Ethan possessed screamed no. This was his boss, not his direct supervisor. He worked 3 levels below her line of sight, but the person at the very top of the organizational chart. You didn't invite the CEO into your home at 5 in the morning. You didn't get involved in whatever crisis had brought her here looking like her life had just detonated. You said something polite and professional, you offered to call someone for her, and you closed the door on whatever mess this was before it became your mess too. But she looked so broken standing there, so completely unlike the polished, untouchable figure he'd glimpsed in meetings and company-wide emails. Ethan stepped back and opened the door wider. Sloane walked past him into the apartment, and he caught the faint smell of expensive perfume mixed with something else. Wine, maybe, or champagne. She stopped in the middle of his living room and just stood there, clutching her heels, staring at nothing. Ethan closed the door, locked it, turned to face this impossible situation. Do you want to sit down? He offered. Sloane looked at the couch like she'd forgotten what furniture was for. Then she moved toward it, lowered herself onto the edge of the middle cushion, and set her heels on the floor with exaggerated care, like she was concentrating very hard on this simple task. Ethan remained standing near the kitchen, maintaining distance, still trying to understand what was happening. "Should I call someone?" he asked. "Your assistant? Security?" "No." The word came out fast and sharp. "Please, no one. I needed—" She pressed both hands to her face. Her shoulders started shaking. Ethan had exactly zero experience with this. Comforting a crying 3-year-old when he scraped his knee? Sure. Handling Oliver's meltdown when his favorite stuffed animal went missing? He'd developed a whole system. But a CEO breaking down in his living room before dawn? No frame of reference whatsoever. He did the only thing that made sense. He went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and brought it to her. Sloane took it without looking up, drank half of it in one go, set it on the coffee table with a shaking hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan sat down in the armchair across from the couch, close enough to be helpful, far enough to not crowd her. He waited. The radiator clanked. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's alarm went off, muffled through walls. Normal morning sounds in a normal building, except nothing about this morning was normal. "I was at a gala," Sloane said finally, still not looking at him. "Corporate donors, board members, everyone who matters. I gave a speech about innovation and sustainable growth and strategic partnerships. I smiled for 300 photos. I shook hands until my wrist hurt." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And then I went out onto the balcony to get some air, and I couldn't go back in. I couldn't smile one more time. I couldn't pretend one more second that any of it mattered." She looked up at him then, and Ethan saw something in her eyes that he recognized. The same hollow exhaustion he'd felt in the weeks after Sarah died, when everyone kept telling him how strong he was, how well he was handling it, and all he wanted was permission to fall apart. "I left," Sloane continued, "walked out, didn't tell anyone, just got in my car and started driving." She gestured vaguely at herself. "I don't even remember deciding to come here. Your address was in my head, from the employee directory. And I was outside your building, and I thought—" She stopped, shook her head. "I don't know what I thought." Ethan tried to imagine it. Sloane Carrington, in her gala dress, driving through Chicago at 4 a.m, ending up outside the apartment of someone she'd never spoken to. It should have been creepy. It should have been concerning. Instead, it just seemed desperately sad. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I saw you once," she said, 3 months ago, in the lobby. You were with your son. He dropped his backpack and everything spilled out. Books, crayons, some kind of toy dinosaur. And you got down on the floor with him and helped him pick it up. You weren't frustrated. You weren't in a hurry. You were just present. Like nothing else in the world mattered except making sure he knew it was okay. She met his eyes. "I watched you for maybe 30 seconds, and I thought, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when someone actually gives a damn." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. "I know this is insane," Sloane said quickly. "I know I shouldn't be here. I know this is completely inappropriate and probably illegal in some HR sense, and you have every right to call building security or whoever you call when your CEO shows up at your door having a breakdown." She stood up abruptly. "I should go. I'm sorry. This was a mistake." "Wait." Ethan stood too. "You don't have to go." Sloane stopped halfway to the door, turned back. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "I know." Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets, trying to find the right words. "But you look like you shouldn't be alone right now. And I'm already awake, so—" He shrugged. "Stay. Have some coffee. Catch your breath. Then you can figure out what comes next." Sloane stared at him like he'd just offered her something impossible. "Why would you do that?" she asked. Ethan thought about the weeks after Sarah's funeral, how people had brought casseroles and condolences and then disappeared when he needed them most, how he'd spent night after night sitting alone in the dark, drowning, because everyone assumed he wanted privacy, how isolation had nearly destroyed him. "Because sometimes the worst thing you can do is leave someone alone with their own head," he said. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. She looked away, blinking hard. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay. Coffee would be—" "Thank you." Ethan went to the kitchen and started a fresh pot. Sloane drifted over to the window, keeping her distance, keeping herself separate. She looked small standing there, despite the expensive dress and the reputation that preceded her. "Does your son know who I am?" she asked. "Oliver's 6. He knows I work at Carrington Dynamics, but corporate hierarchies aren't really on his radar yet." "That must be nice." The coffee maker gurgled. Ethan pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, one with a faded university logo, one with a cartoon dinosaur that Oliver had insisted he buy. "How do you take it?" he asked. "Black, usually." Sloane paused. "Actually, do you have cream? And sugar? I haven't had it that way in 15 years, but right now I don't want to taste anything bitter." Ethan added cream and 2 sugars to 1 mug, left the other black for himself. He handed her the dinosaur mug without thinking about it. Sloane looked down at the cartoonish T-Rex, and something in her expression cracked. She laughed, a real laugh this time, startled and slightly hysterical. "This is the most surreal night of my life," she said. "Morning," Ethan corrected. "Technically." "Morning." She took a sip of coffee, closed her eyes. "Oh, that's good. Why does this taste better than the $4 artisan pour-over my assistant gets me every day?" "Because you're drinking it in Sweatpants Optional Company instead of a boardroom." Sloane opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since she'd arrived. Ethan felt exposed under that gaze, like she was cataloging every detail. The tired lines around his eyes, the calluses on his hands from the weekend carpentry projects he used to decompress, the way he held his coffee mug with both hands because somewhere along the line that had become a comfort ritual. "You lost someone," she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan's throat tightened. "My wife. 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "Me too." They stood there in the kitchen, 2 strangers drinking coffee in the gray light before dawn, connected by nothing except this strange, fragile moment. "I'm not supposed to be the one falling apart," Sloane said quietly. "I'm the one who fixes things, who makes the hard calls, who holds it together when everyone else is panicking." She set her mug down on the counter. "But I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being the strong one, the certain one, the one who always knows what to do next." "So stop," Ethan said. Sloane looked at him like he'd suggested she sprout wings and fly. "It's not that simple, isn't it? For one morning, stop being the CEO. Stop being whoever they need you to be. Just be tired, be uncertain, be someone who doesn't have all the answers. And then what? Then nothing. You're just a person having coffee at 5:30 in the morning. No performance required." Sloane picked up her mug again, cradling it in both hands the same way he did. She stared down into it like she might find answers floating in the cream. "I don't remember the last time I was just a person," she admitted. "Well," Ethan said, "you picked a good place to practice. My standards are pretty low." That got another small smile from her. Progress. They drank their coffee in silence for a while. Comfortable silence, somehow. The kind that didn't need filling. At 5:47, Ethan heard Oliver's door open down the hall. Small footsteps padded toward the bathroom. The toilet flushed. Water ran. More footsteps, heading toward the kitchen. "Dad?" Oliver appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. He wore dinosaur pajamas and his hair stuck up in 5 different directions. "You're up early?" Then he saw Sloane and stopped. Ethan watched Oliver process the presence of a strange woman in their kitchen, saw his son's sleepy confusion shift to curiosity. "Hi," Oliver said. "Hi," Sloane replied. She sounded almost nervous. "I'm Oliver." "I'm Sloane." "Are you Dad's friend?" Sloane glanced at Ethan, a question in her eyes. He gave a small nod. "Yes," she said. "I'm your dad's friend." "Oh, okay." Oliver accepted this with the easy logic of 6-year-olds. "Can I have cereal?" Ethan moved to the cabinet and pulled out the box of off-brand Cheerios. Oliver climbed onto his usual stool at the counter, and Ethan poured cereal and milk into a bowl with practiced efficiency. Sloane watched this whole interaction with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read, something between fascination and pain. "Do you have kids?" Oliver asked her, mouthful of cereal. "Chew first, buddy," Ethan reminded him automatically. Oliver chewed, swallowed, repeated the question. "No," Sloane said, "I don't." "Why not?" "Oliver," Ethan started. "It's okay." Sloane set down her mug. "I never made time for it. I was always too busy with work. That's sad, Oliver said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Work is boring. Kids are fun. Sloane laughed, and this time it sounded almost genuine. You make a compelling argument. Oliver went back to his cereal, the topic already forgotten. Ethan caught Sloane's eye and shrugged apologetically. She shook her head. No apology needed. At 6:15, Ethan started the morning routine, cleaned up Oliver's bowl, made sure his backpack was ready for school, found the permission slip that needed signing and added it to the folder. All the small, mundane tasks that made up the architecture of their lives. Sloane stayed in the kitchen, out of the way, but watching everything. When Ethan looked over, she had her arms wrapped around herself, holding her own elbows. By 6:30, Oliver was dressed and ready. Backpack on, shoes tied, jacket zipped. We have to leave for school in 10 minutes, Ethan told him. Go brush your teeth. Oliver ran off down the hall. Ethan turned to Sloane. I have to do the school run, he said. You're welcome to stay here, or I can call you a car. Or, can I come with you? The words came out fast, almost desperate. I know that's weird. I know this whole thing is weird. But I don't want to go back to my life yet. I just want... She stopped. I don't know what I want. Ethan should have said no, should have drawn a line, should have protected the boundary between his private life and this surreal intrusion. Instead, he said, okay, but we're walking. It's only 4 blocks. Sloane looked down at her bare feet, her evening dress, her complete lack of weather-appropriate clothing. I have sweats you can borrow, Ethan offered, and sneakers if you don't mind them being too big, unless you want to walk 4 blocks in Chicago in November wearing that. 5 minutes later, Sloane emerged from the bathroom wearing Ethan's Northwestern hoodie and a pair of his old running pants rolled at the waist and ankles. The sneakers were comically large on her feet. She'd pulled her hair into a messy ponytail and scrubbed most of the makeup off her face. She looked nothing like the CEO of Carrington Dynamics. She looked real. Oliver stared at her. You look funny. Oliver, Ethan warned. Different funny, Oliver clarified, like a regular person. Sloane smiled. Thanks, I think. They left the apartment together, Ethan, Oliver, and the CEO dressed in borrowed sweatpants. If anyone had told Ethan yesterday morning that this would be his life today, he would have laughed them out of the room. The November air bit cold and sharp. Oliver chattered about something that happened at school yesterday, some complicated social dynamics involving who got to be the T-Rex at recess. Sloane walked beside them, hands shoved in the hoodie pocket, quiet. 4 blocks had never felt so long and so short at the same time. Horace Mann Elementary came into view, a brick building with bright murals painted on the side, kids streaming through the front doors in clusters of backpacks and noise. That's my school, Oliver announced proudly, as if Sloane might not have figured that out. They stopped at the edge of the schoolyard. Other parents milled around, doing drop-off, chatting in small groups. Normal morning chaos. Ethan crouched down to Oliver's level. Have a good day, okay? Remember, I'm picking you up at 3:15. I know, Dad. Oliver threw his arms around Ethan's neck, squeezed tight, then let go and ran toward the building without looking back. That was Oliver. Always forward, never hesitant. Ethan stood and found Sloane watching him with that same unreadable expression. What? He asked. You're a good father. I'm a tired father who makes it up as he goes. Same thing, I think. They turned and started walking back toward the apartment, slower this time. No 6-year-old setting the pace. Thank you for letting me come, Sloane said after half a block. That was, I don't know, normal. It felt normal. It was normal. That's just what mornings look like in my world. I don't think I've had a normal morning in 10 years. They walked another block in silence. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye. She moved differently than she had a few hours ago, less tightly wound, less like she might shatter. What happens now? She asked as they approached his building. Ethan stopped on the sidewalk. What do you want to happen? Honestly, I want to not exist for a few more hours. I want to not be Sloane Carrington. I want to not make decisions or face consequences or figure out how I'm going to explain last night to my board. She looked up at his building. But that's not fair to you. You've already done more than anyone should reasonably do for a stranger who showed up at their door having a crisis. You're not a stranger anymore, Ethan said. You're someone who borrowed my sweatpants and met my kid. That's practically family. Sloane laughed, and it sounded less broken than before. Come on, Ethan said. I have 2 hours before I have to log in for work. You cannot exist on my couch for a while. No decisions required. They went back upstairs. Sloane collapsed onto the couch like someone had cut her strings. Ethan brought her a blanket without asking, and she pulled it up to her chin. I should let you work, she said, eyes already closing. I'm ahead on my projects. I can take a morning. That seems like a poor professional choice. I'm making a lot of those today. Sloane smiled without opening her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Ethan settled into the armchair with his laptop and pretended to answer emails. Mostly he just watched the CEO of his company sleep on his couch, wrapped in his blanket, looking more peaceful than she'd looked all morning. This was insane. This was going to complicate everything. This was the worst possible decision he could make for his career, his stability, his carefully constructed life. And yet, Sloane slept until noon. When she finally stirred, she looked disoriented for a few seconds before memory caught up with her. She sat up, pushing hair out of her face. I fell asleep. You did. On your couch. That too. She looked around the apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. Took in the framed photos on the bookshelf. Oliver at various ages, Sarah smiling in a few of the older ones, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the drawing Oliver had taped to the fridge, all purple dinosaurs and scribbled suns. This is a nice life, she said quietly. It's a small life. Small doesn't mean less. Sloane folded the blanket with careful precision, setting it on the arm of the couch. I should go. I've imposed enough. You haven't imposed. I showed up at your door at 5 in the morning and cried on your furniture. Yeah, but you also made Oliver laugh, which is pretty much the price of admission around here. Sloane stood, smoothed down the borrowed sweatpants. I should change back. Give you your clothes. Keep them, Ethan said. I've got plenty. I can't walk into my building wearing this. So don't. Call your assistant. Have them bring you something. Take whatever time you need to be ready to go back. Sloane stared at him. Why are you being so kind to me? Ethan thought about all the ways he could answer that. Because she looked like she needed it. Because he remembered what it felt like to be drowning. Because something about her desperation at dawn had cracked something open in him that had been sealed shut for 3 years. Because you knocked on my door, he said finally, and I opened it. Sloane's eyes filled with tears again. She blinked them back. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Whatever this is, I don't know how to be vulnerable. I don't know how to accept help. I built my entire life on not needing anyone. You don't have to figure it all out right now. You just have to get through today. And tomorrow? Tomorrow can wait. Sloane pulled out her phone, the first time Ethan had seen her look at it all morning. The screen lit up with notification after notification. Missed calls, text messages, email alerts, the entire world trying to reach her. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned it off and put it back in her pocket. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Will you have coffee with me again? Tomorrow morning, before the world starts demanding things. Ethan knew he should say no, knew this was already too complicated, too strange, too likely to blow up in his face. 5:30? He offered. 5:30, Sloane agreed. She called her assistant from the bathroom, gave some explanation Ethan couldn't hear. 20 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up outside with a garment bag and a pair of heels. Sloane changed, emerged looking more like herself, polished, professional, untouchable. But when she handed back his folded sweatpants and hoodie, her hands were shaking. Thank you, she said. For everything. For not asking questions, for not judging, for just letting me fall apart. Any time, Ethan said, and meant it. Sloane left. The apartment felt emptier without her. Ethan stood in the middle of his living room, holding his sweatpants, trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Staff meeting in 30 minutes. He had to go back to work. Had to pretend this morning hadn't happened. Had to sit through presentations and status updates and act like the CEO hadn't just slept on his couch. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for opening the door. S. Ethan stared at it for a long time. Then he saved the number and went back to his normal life, knowing it wasn't quite normal anymore. The next morning, at 5:30 exactly, someone knocked on his door. Ethan opened it. Sloane stood there with 2 cups of expensive coffee and a fragile smile. Hi, she said. Hi, Ethan replied. She came in, and they sat at his kitchen table in the early morning quiet, drinking coffee and saying very little, because sometimes the point wasn't conversation. It became a routine. Every morning at 5:30, Sloane would knock. Ethan would let her in. They'd drink coffee and talk about nothing important: weather, books, the weird news stories that only surfaced at dawn. Oliver would stumble out eventually, accept Sloane's presence with the easy adaptability of children, eat his cereal, and chatter about school. At 6:30, they'd walk Oliver to school. At 7, Sloane would leave for her office, and Ethan would start his workday, and they'd both pretend this wasn't happening. A week passed, then 2, then a month. They didn't talk about what it meant, didn't label it, didn't acknowledge that this secret morning ritual was becoming the most honest part of both their days. But something was shifting. Sloane started smiling more, started showing up without makeup, in comfortable clothes, started asking Ethan about his life, his past, his plans for the future, started talking about hers, not the corporate strategy version, but the real one. The loneliness, the pressure, the growing sense that she'd built an empire and forgotten to build a life. And Ethan, careful, cautious Ethan, who hadn't let anyone close since Sarah died, started looking forward to 5:30 a.m. Started setting out 2 mugs instead of 1. Started noticing how Sloane's whole body relaxed when she walked into his apartment, like she was finally allowed to stop performing. One morning in early December, Oliver asked the question Ethan had been avoiding. "Is Sloane your girlfriend?" They were at the breakfast table. Sloane had just arrived, coffee in hand, snowflakes melting in her hair. She froze. Ethan froze. Oliver munched his cereal, oblivious to the weight of what he'd just asked. "We're friends," Ethan said carefully. "But you like her, right? Like her?" "Oliver, it's okay if you do. Mom's been gone a long time. She'd probably want you to like someone." The room went very quiet. Sloane set down her coffee. Ethan couldn't look at either of them. "Your mom loved your dad very much," Sloane said softly. "And you. If she wanted anything, it was probably for both of you to be happy." Oliver considered this with 6-year-old seriousness. "I'm happy. Are you happy, Dad?" Ethan looked up and met Sloane's eyes across the table. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." Sloane smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and made her look 10 years younger. "Me too," she said. Oliver nodded, satisfied, and went back to his cereal. Just like that, the truth was out there between them. Acknowledged. Real. After they dropped Oliver at school, they stood on the sidewalk in the cold morning light, breath fogging between them. "Your kid is perceptive," Sloane said. "Terrifyingly so." "Is he right? Do you—" She stopped. "This is ridiculous. I negotiate million-dollar deals without blinking. I can't ask a simple question." "Yes," Ethan said. "He's right. I like you. Like you." Sloane laughed, surprised and delighted and nervous all at once. "I like you too," she said. "I don't know what to do with that, but I like you. We don't have to figure it out right now. That seems to be our approach to everything. It's working so far." They stood there a moment longer, not touching, just being. Then Sloane's phone buzzed with the first of many urgent messages, and the real world came crashing back in. "I have to go," she said reluctantly. "I know. Same time tomorrow?" "Always." Sloane walked away toward her waiting car, and Ethan watched her go, feeling something unfamiliar unfolding in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. Or just the terrifying, exhilarating sense that his carefully controlled life was about to get a lot more complicated. And he was okay with that. The shift happened so gradually that Ethan didn't notice it at first. Small things. Sloane started leaving a toothbrush in his bathroom, a spare pair of shoes by the door, a jacket on the hook next to Oliver's backpack. None of it planned, none of it discussed, just the slow accumulation of presence, like sediment building into something solid. By mid-December, she was showing up 6 days a week instead of 5. By January, she had a drawer. They still hadn't kissed, hadn't defined what this was, hadn't acknowledged that what started as refuge had become something neither of them quite knew how to name. They just kept showing up at 5:30, kept drinking coffee in comfortable silence, kept pretending this was sustainable. It wasn't. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in late January. Sloane arrived 10 minutes late, which never happened. When Ethan opened the door, she looked wrecked. Not the broken way she'd looked that first morning, but exhausted in a bone-deep way that suggested she hadn't slept at all. "Board meeting yesterday?" she said, brushing past him into the apartment. "Lasted until midnight. Then I had emails until 3. Ethan closed the door and watched her collapse onto the couch. "Did you sleep at all?" "Does 20 minutes in my office count?" "Not really." "Then no." She rubbed her eyes. "I should have just stayed home. I'm useless like this." "You want to skip the school walk today?" Sloane's head snapped up. No, I need... She stopped. "That's the only part of my day that feels real anymore. Everything else is just performance." Ethan sat down next to her, leaving careful space between them. "You know you don't have to come here every morning, right? If it's too much, if you need to sleep or handle work or just have time to yourself, I don't want time to myself." The words came out sharp, almost angry. "I've had 38 years of time to myself. I know exactly what that looks like, and I'm tired of it." They sat in silence. The coffee maker beeped, ignored. "What do you want?" Ethan asked quietly. Sloane turned to look at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back in a messy knot that had come half undone. She looked nothing like the polished CEO, and everything like someone hanging on by her fingernails. "I want this to be my real life," she said. "I want the morning coffee and the school walks and the stupid dinosaur cereal. I want Oliver asking me random questions about why clouds float. I want you explaining carpentry joints at 6 in the morning because it helps you think. I want normal. I want small. I want..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "I want to stop pretending this is just a break from my actual life and accept that this is the only part of my life that doesn't feel like slow suicide." Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Sloane! I know it's not fair." She stood up abruptly, started pacing. "I know I'm the one who built that life. I'm the one who chose the company over everything else. I'm the one who spent 20 years climbing and clawing and sacrificing until there was nothing left except the crown. And now I'm standing here in your apartment saying, I want to throw it all away for breakfast routines and elementary school drop-offs, and that's insane. That's not how the world works. That's not how any of this works." "Maybe it could be," Ethan said. Sloane stopped pacing. "What?" "Maybe it could work like that if you wanted it to." "You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what it would cost." "Then tell me." Sloane shook her head. "The board is already asking questions. They've noticed I'm different, softer, distracted, less aggressive in negotiations. They think I'm losing my edge." She laughed bitterly. "They're right. I am losing my edge. I don't want the edge anymore. I want to be a person who gives a damn about things that matter, not a shark who only knows how to bite." Ethan stood and crossed to her. Still didn't touch her, but stood close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "What would happen if you told them the truth?" he asked. "What truth?" "That you're tired, that you want a different life, that you're not interested in being the person they need you to be anymore." "They'd force me out, or I'd have to resign. Either way, I'd lose everything I spent 2 decades building." "Would you?" "Yes, obviously. You'd lose the title," Ethan said, "the power, the 70-hour weeks and the midnight emails and the board meetings that last until you want to scream. You'd lose all of that. But what would you keep?" Sloane stared at him. "This," Ethan continued, "you'd keep this. The mornings, the coffee, the walks, Oliver asking you why gravity works. You'd keep the parts of your life that actually make you want to be alive. That's not enough to build a life on. Isn't it? I built one. You didn't have a choice. Your wife died. You had to rebuild." "And you're dying," Ethan said quietly. "Slowly. One board meeting at a time, one performance at a time, one day at a time of pretending to be someone you're not. So yeah, maybe it's different, but the choice is the same. Keep going until there's nothing left, or burn it down and find out who you are without the crown." Sloane's eyes filled with tears. She didn't let them fall. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. What if I give it all up and it's not enough? What if I leave and I'm still empty? What if this..." She gestured around the apartment. "What if this is just a fantasy I'm using to avoid the real problem, and the real problem is me?" Ethan reached out then, took her hand. First time he'd touched her beyond the accidental brush of fingers passing coffee mugs. Her hand was cold, shaking. "You're not the problem," he said. "The problem is that you've been trying to be everything to everyone except yourself. And yeah, maybe this is a fantasy. Maybe it won't work. Maybe you'll try the quiet life and hate it. But at least you'll know. At least you'll have tried. Sloane looked down at their joined hands. I don't know how to be just a person. I've been the CEO for so long, I don't remember what else I am. Then we'll figure it out, together. Why would you do that? Why would you sign up for this mess? Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Because I opened the door. And I meant it when I said you could stay. The tears fell then. Sloane made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob, and then she was stepping forward, closing the distance, wrapping her arms around him like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Ethan held her. Let her shake, let her cry, let her fall apart in his kitchen at 5:43 in the morning, while the coffee got cold and the sky outside turned from black to gray. Oliver's door opened down the hall. Sloane pulled back immediately, wiping her eyes. Sorry, she muttered. I didn't mean to. Don't. Ethan caught her wrist gently. Don't apologize for being human. Oliver appeared in the kitchen doorway, took in the scene with a sleepy frown. Are you guys fighting? He asked. No, Ethan said. Then why is Sloane crying? Sometimes people cry when they're not fighting, Sloane said, her voice still rough. Sometimes they cry because they're figuring something out. Oliver processed this with the gravity of a child who'd seen his father cry enough times to understand. He walked over to Sloane and held up his arms. She looked at Ethan, uncertain. He wants a hug, Ethan translated. Sloane crouched down and Oliver wrapped his small arms around her neck. It's okay to be sad, Oliver said into her shoulder, like he was reciting something he'd been told 100 times. Feelings are just feelings. They don't last forever. Sloane's face crumpled. She hugged Oliver tighter and Ethan watched something shift in her expression, some final wall coming down. When Oliver pulled back, he looked very serious. Do you want cereal? Cereal makes everything better. Does it? Sloane asked. Yeah, Dad says sugar and routine are the foundation of civilization. I said structure and routine, Ethan corrected. You definitely said sugar. Sloane laughed and it sounded lighter than before. I would love some cereal. They had breakfast together. Normal, mundane, ordinary. Oliver chattered about a project they were doing in class about the solar system. Sloane asked questions, real questions, and listened to the answers like they mattered. Ethan made toast and tried not to think too hard about what had just happened. After Oliver left to get dressed, Sloane turned to Ethan. I'm going to do it, she said. Do what? Tell the board I want to step back. Not all at once, but transition, find a successor, build an exit plan. I don't know what comes after yet, but I know I can't keep doing this. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Ethan nodded. Okay. Okay? Okay. Sloane smiled. You're not going to try to talk me out of it? Give me reasons why it's a terrible idea? You don't need more people telling you what to do. You need someone who trusts you to figure it out, even if I mess it up? Especially then. They walked Oliver to school through January slush, the three of them bundled against the cold. Oliver ran ahead, throwing snowballs at imaginary targets. Sloane walked beside Ethan, their hands brushing every few steps but not quite holding. At the schoolyard gate, Oliver turned back. Sloane, are you coming to my planet presentation next week? Sloane glanced at Ethan. He gave a small shrug. Your call. What day? She asked. Thursday, at 2. I'll be there. Promise? Promise. Oliver grinned and ran off toward his friends. Ethan and Sloane walked back in silence, a different kind of silence than before. Heavier, more aware. I've never promised a kid anything before, Sloane said. You'll keep it. How do you know? Because you showed up every morning for 3 months even when it was hard. You don't break the promises that matter. They reached his building. Sloane stopped on the sidewalk, the moment of decision visible on her face. I should go, she said. Face the day. Start the impossible conversation. You want company? For the board meeting? She laughed. That would definitely send a message. I meant moral support, coffee after, someone to debrief with when it all goes sideways. Sloane looked at him for a long moment. You're serious? I took the afternoon off. You did not. I did. Oliver's presentation is Thursday, today's Tuesday. I figured you might need a friend. Something in Sloane's expression softened. I don't deserve you. Good thing it's not about deserving. She kissed him then, quick and impulsive, barely more than a press of lips, but it sent electricity down Ethan's spine. When she pulled back, she looked as surprised as he felt. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to. I should have asked." Ethan kissed her back. Properly this time, slow and deliberate and certain. When they broke apart, Sloane was smiling. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay. Coffee after. Debriefing. Moral support. All of it. It's a date." "Is it?" "I think it might be." Sloane laughed, kissed him once more, then headed for her car. Ethan watched her go, feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff and discovered he could fly. The board meeting happened at 10. Sloane texted him at 10:47. "They think I'm having a breakdown." Ethan replied, "Are you?" "Maybe. Is it still a breakdown if you know exactly what you're doing? That's called a breakthrough. Feels the same from the inside." At 11:23. "They want me to take a leave of absence. Rest and recover. Translation, get my head straight and come back ready to be the person they need." "What did you say?" "I said I'd think about it. Then I said I wanted to transition to an advisory role within 6 months. Then they all looked at me like I'd announced I was joining the circus." "Are you?" "Joining the circus?" "Yeah. Only if you're coming with me." Ethan smiled at his phone like an idiot. At noon, Sloane showed up at his door in her full corporate armor, tailored suit, perfect hair, heels that could double as weapons, but her eyes were bright. "I did it," she said. "I actually did it. How do you feel?" "Terrified, exhilarated, like I just jumped out of a plane without checking if I had a parachute." "Do you have a parachute?" "I have coffee plans and a 6-year-old's planet presentation. That counts, right?" "Absolutely." They went to a diner 3 blocks away, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booze and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since 1987. Sloane looked completely out of place in her $1,000 suit and completely at ease. "Tell me what happened," Ethan said. Sloane wrapped her hands around her mug. "I told them I was tired, that I'd given the company everything I had, and I didn't have anything left to give, that I wanted to transition out with dignity instead of running myself into the ground." She paused. "Richard, he's the board chair. He said I was being emotional, that I was making decisions from a place of burnout instead of strategy." "What did you say?" "I told him he was right, that I was burned out, that I'd been burned out for 5 years, and that maybe emotional decisions were the only honest ones I'd made in a decade." Ethan grinned. "Bet he loved that." He looked like I'd slapped him. Then Margaret, she's been on the board since the beginning, she said she'd seen this coming for months, that I'd been different, softer, more hesitant. She asked if there was someone. Ethan's smile faded. "What did you tell her?" "I said yes, that I'd met someone who reminded me what it felt like to be human instead of a machine, that I wasn't apologizing for it." "How did that go over?" "About as well as you'd expect. Half of them think I'm having a midlife crisis. The other half think I'm being manipulated by some gold digger." Ethan laughed. "A gold digger, right. I'm really playing the long game with my IKEA furniture and student loan debt." "They don't know that. They just know I'm acting irrational. Are you?" Sloane met his eyes. "Probably. But I don't care anymore. I'm so tired of being rational. Rational got me to the top of a tower with no windows and no air. I want irrational. I want messy. I want real." "Real is terrifying." "Good. I've been too comfortable with control for too long." They talked for 2 hours. About the transition plan, about what Sloane might do after, about fears and hopes and all the unknowns that came with blowing up your life on purpose. The diner emptied around them, refilled with the lunch crowd, emptied again. They didn't notice. At 2:30, Ethan's phone buzzed with a reminder, Oliver's pickup. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "Can I come?" "To pick up Oliver?" "Yeah, if that's okay. If it's not too much." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "It's not too much." They picked up Oliver together. He exploded out of the school building with the manic energy of 6-year-olds freed from classroom confinement, saw them both, and ran full speed into Sloane's legs. "You're here!" he shouted, like he hadn't seen her that morning. "I'm here," Sloane confirmed, steadying herself against the impact. "Did you have a good day at work?" "I quit my job." Oliver's eyes went huge. You did? Well, I'm quitting over the next few months. Why? Because I decided I'd rather spend my time doing things I actually enjoy. Like what? Sloane looked at Ethan, then back at Oliver. Like hanging out with you guys. Oliver processed this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Then he nodded, satisfied. That's a good reason. On the walk home, Oliver held both their hands, swinging between them like a bridge. People looked at them. This makeshift family, obviously new to the configuration. Ethan felt the weight of those looks but didn't care. Sloane squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. At the apartment, Oliver dumped his backpack and immediately started building something elaborate with blocks. Ethan made hot chocolate. Sloane sat on the floor with Oliver, helping construct what appeared to be a spaceship castle hybrid. Does it have to make sense? She asked, holding up a piece. Nothing makes sense in space, Oliver said confidently. That's why it's cool. Ethan watched them from the kitchen, watched Sloane's careful concentration as she followed Oliver's increasingly complex instructions, watched the way she laughed when the whole structure collapsed, and Oliver declared it a meteor strike, watched her be present, fully present, in a way he suspected she hadn't been in years. His phone rang. Work. He ignored it. It rang again. You should get that, Sloane said, looking up. It can wait. Ethan, it can wait. The phone stopped ringing, started again 30 seconds later. It's clearly important, Sloane said. Ethan sighed and answered. This is Ethan. Hale, it's Morrison, his manager, sounding stressed. We have a situation. The Dalton contract fell through. Clients threatening to pull everything. We need all hands on deck to salvage this. I'm off this afternoon. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is critical. Matthews is already on a call with legal, and we need your technical specs to make the case. Ethan looked at Oliver and Sloane on the floor, at the hot chocolate cooling on the counter, at the life he'd built in this small, careful space. I can't, he said. Silence on the other end. What? I can't come in. I took the afternoon off for a reason. It's important. This contract is worth $2 million, and my afternoon is worth more than that to me. More silence. Then, Hale, I need you to think very carefully about what you're saying. I have. The answer is no. This could affect your position with the company. Then I guess it does. Ethan hung up. Sloane stared at him. Did you just... Yeah. For us? For me. For what I want my life to look like. Oliver looked up from his blocks. Are you in trouble, Dad? Maybe, probably. Is it bad trouble? Ethan sat down on the floor next to them. I don't know yet, but it felt like the right choice. Oliver accepted this and went back to building. Sloane kept staring. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. You're not the only one who's been sleepwalking through a life that doesn't fit anymore. I've been playing it safe for 3 years, doing exactly what's expected, never taking risks. And I'm tired of it. I want to build something that matters, not just maintain something that pays the bills. What if they fire you? Then I find something else, something better. You have a kid to support, a mortgage, responsibilities. I know, but I also have skills and experience and enough in savings to make it through a rough patch. And more importantly, I have a 6-year-old who's watching me to learn how to be a person. What do I want to teach him? Play it safe? Never risk anything? Or that sometimes the right choice is the hard one? Sloane's eyes were shining. You're insane. Learning from the best. She kissed him. Right there on the floor, surrounded by blocks and hot chocolate and the wreckage of the structures they'd both built. Oliver made a disgusted noise. Gross. They broke apart, laughing. You'll get used to it, Ethan told him. Do I have to? Yeah, probably. Oliver sighed dramatically and went back to his spaceship castle. That night, after Oliver was in bed, Ethan and Sloane sat on the couch in the dark. Not talking, just being. This is really happening, Sloane said. Yeah, we're really doing this. Looks like it. It's going to be messy. Probably. People are going to talk at the company, in your life, mine. They're going to have opinions. Let them. Sloane turned to look at him. You're not worried? I'm terrified, Ethan admitted, But I'm more terrified of waking up in 5 years and realizing I let this go because it was complicated. What if it doesn't work? What if we crash and burn? Then we crash and burn, but at least we'll know we tried. Sloane leaned her head on his shoulder. Ethan put his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, watching the lights of the city through the window. Two people who'd spent so long being strong that they'd forgotten how good it felt to be soft. "I love you," Sloane said quietly. "I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy, but I love you." Ethan's heart kicked hard. "I love you too." "Really?" "Really. Have for a while now. Just didn't want to scare you off." "I'm already scared. Might as well be scared together." "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me," Sloane laughed. "We're terrible at this." "The worst." "Good. I don't want perfect. I want real." "Then you're in the right place." Thursday came too fast. Ethan's phone stayed silent. No callback from Morrison, no summons to HR. Just ominous quiet. He tried not to think about it. At 1:45, he and Sloane walked into Oliver's classroom. It smelled like crayons and kid sweat and possibility. Parents clustered around tiny desks while children bounced with nervous energy. Oliver saw them, and his whole face lit up. "You both came!" "We promised," Sloane said. The presentation was chaos. Kids talking over each other, forgetting their lines, holding up poster boards upside down. Oliver's turn came, and he stood in front of the class with a model of Jupiter made from a painted soccer ball. "Jupiter is the biggest planet," he said solemnly. "It has a storm that's been going for hundreds of years. Scientists don't know why it won't stop. Maybe the planet just likes being stormy." The teacher tried to add educational context, but Oliver was already holding up his soccer ball with pride. Ethan glanced at Sloane. She was wiping her eyes. "You okay?" he whispered. "I've never been to one of these before. A kid's school thing." "What do you think?" "I think I've been missing everything that matters." After the presentation, Oliver dragged them both over to meet his teacher, Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and chalk dust on her cardigan. "You must be Oliver's parents," she said. "I'm his dad," Ethan said. "This is Sloane. She's—" He paused, unsure how to finish. "I'm his friend," Sloane said, then quieter. "I'm hoping to be more than that." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Oliver talks about you both all the time. It's clear he's very loved." Walking out of the school, Oliver between them again, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Messy and uncertain, and definitely not what anyone would have predicted, but right. His phone buzzed. Morrison. "We need to talk. Tomorrow." 9 a.m. Ethan showed Sloane the message. "Tomorrow, we find out if I still have a job," he said. "Are you ready?" "No, but that's never stopped me before." That night, after Oliver fell asleep, they stayed up talking about contingency plans. What Ethan would do if he got fired. What Sloane would do as her transition accelerated. How they'd navigate the reality of their relationship once it went from secret morning ritual to public knowledge. "I should probably move out of your apartment," Sloane said. "I mean, not that I live here, but I should stop showing up every morning." "Why?" "Because when this goes public, and it will, people need to see that we're serious. That this isn't just me hiding at your place while I figure my life out." "Where will you go?" "I have a penthouse I haven't slept in for 3 months. Might be time to remember what it looks like." "I'll miss you at 5:30. "I'll miss being here." They were quiet for a moment. "What if we didn't hide?" Sloane asked. "What do you mean?" "What if we just told people? Your work, mine. What if we stopped treating this like something shameful and just owned it?" "You want to go public with this? Now?" "I'm stepping down anyway. You might get fired tomorrow. What do we have to lose?" Ethan thought about it. About the whispers and the judgment and the inevitable complications. About Oliver having to answer questions. About his parents finding out he was dating his CEO. About all the ways this could go sideways. Then he thought about hiding Sloane. About pretending the best thing in his life didn't exist. About teaching Oliver that love was something you kept secret. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." "Really?" "Really. We're already jumping off the cliff. Might as well jump together." Sloane kissed him, and it felt like a promise. The next morning, Ethan walked into Morrison's office at exactly 9. His manager sat behind his desk looking tired and annoyed in equal measure. Sit down, Hale. Ethan sat. Do you want to explain what happened on Tuesday? I prioritized my personal life over a work emergency. You hung up on me. I did. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You've been with this company for 7 years. Never a problem, never a complaint, model employee. And then suddenly you're refusing direct orders and hanging up on your supervisor. It wasn't sudden. I've just been better at hiding it before. Hiding what? That I don't want this life anymore. That I'm tired of treating my family like an afterthought. That there are things more important than a $2 million contract. Morrison stared at him. Are you resigning? Are you firing me? I don't know yet. That's what this meeting is supposed to determine. Ethan took a breath. Then I'll make it easy for you. I want to transition to part-time, 30 hours a week max. No more emergency availability. No more sacrificing my evenings and weekends. I'm good at my job and I'll keep being good at it, but not at the expense of everything else. That's not how this works. Then I quit. The words hung in the air between them. Morrison's expression shifted. You're serious? Completely. What changed? I fell in love with someone who taught me what it looks like to choose yourself, and I decided I wanted to live like that too. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, then he sighed. 25 hours, flexible schedule, but you're taking a pay cut and you're giving up any chance at promotion. Ethan blinked. What? You heard me. 25 hours, flexible schedule. I'll sell it to HR as part of our work-life balance initiative. But if you ever hang up on me again, we're having a different conversation. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm losing a full-time employee over this. But I've also watched you slowly disappear over the past 3 years, and frankly, I prefer you alive. Morrison stood up. Now get out of my office and go be with whoever made you remember how to be a person. Ethan left the building in a daze, called Sloane before he even reached his car. I still have a job, he said when she answered. You do? Part-time, flexible hours. I'm taking a pay cut, but I still have a job. Sloane laughed, bright and relieved. We're doing this. We're actually doing this. Yeah, we are. I'm terrified. Me too. Good. Let's be terrified together. The news broke on a Wednesday in early March, not with a press release or a formal announcement, but with a photograph. Someone on the Carrington Dynamics board had leaked it to the business press. The image showed Sloane and Ethan leaving Oliver's school, her hand in his, both of them laughing at something Oliver had said. The headline read, Carrington CEO's Mystery Man, Single Father, Employee Sparks Questions About Leadership Judgment. Ethan's phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. He ignored the first 3 calls, then checked the news alert that came through at 6:52. We're famous, he said, showing Sloane the screen. She'd spent the night, something that was happening more often now. They'd stopped pretending she was just visiting. Her clothes hung in his closet next to his. Her coffee mug had a permanent spot in the cabinet. Sloane took the phone, read the article, and her face went carefully blank. The CEO mask sliding into place. They called you my mystery man, she said. Like you're some kind of scandal. Aren't I? You're the best thing that's happened to me in 20 years. If that's a scandal, then fine. Oliver wandered into the kitchen, still in pajamas, hair sticking up, at angles that defied physics. Why is everyone looking at their phones? He asked. Ethan and Sloane exchanged glances. There's a picture of us online, Ethan said carefully. From your school. Some people are talking about it. Oliver climbed onto his stool, suddenly interested. Can I see? Sloane showed him the photo on the phone. Oliver studied it with the seriousness of an art critic. We look happy, he said finally. We are happy, Sloane replied. Then why does Dad look worried? Because the article continued below the photo, Ethan thought. Because it questioned Sloane's judgment and suggested impropriety. Because it painted him as either a gold digger or a fool, and he wasn't sure which was worse. Because their quiet private refuge had just been dragged into public view, and nothing would be the same after this. Because sometimes good things are also complicated, Ethan said instead. Oliver accepted this with a shrug and asked for cereal. By 8 a.m., Ethan's phone had 17 missed calls. His parents. His brother. Coworkers. People he hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very interested in his personal life. Sloane's phone was worse. She'd turned it off entirely. "I have a board meeting at 10, she said, staring at the blank screen. "Emergency session. Richard called it last night before this even published. Someone must have tipped him off that the photo was coming. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That I'm in love with you. That I'm not apologizing for it. That they can accept it or force me out. But either way, I'm not hiding anymore." That's a good speech. Think it'll work? Probably not, but it's still the right thing to say. Sloane laughed, but it sounded strained. "I knew this was coming. I knew the moment we decided to go public that it would get ugly. I just thought we'd have more time to prepare." Would more time have made it easier? No, but it might have hurt less. Oliver finished his cereal and looked between them. "Are you guys going to break up?" "What? No," Ethan said quickly. "Why would you think that?" "Because that's what happens when there's pictures and phone calls and people get weird. Tyler's parents broke up after someone took a picture of his dad with another lady." Ethan crouched down to Oliver's eye level. "That's not what's happening here. The picture is of all three of us together. Nobody did anything wrong. Some people just don't like that Sloane and I are dating." "Why not?" "Because I work for her company. Because she's my boss, kind of. Because there are rules about that sort of thing." Oliver frowned. "But you like each other." "We do. And you're not mean to each other." "No?" "Then the rules are stupid." Sloane made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Out of the mouths of babes." "What?" Oliver asked. "It means you're smarter than most adults," Ethan translated. "I know," Oliver said with absolute confidence and ran off to get dressed. Ethan stood and pulled Sloane into his arms. She buried her face against his shoulder. "I don't want to go to that meeting," she whispered, "so don't." "I have to. If I don't show up, they'll say I'm hiding, that I'm ashamed." "Are you?" "Of you." "Never." "Of the timing? Of how this looks?" "Maybe." "Then tell them that. Tell them you wish it had happened differently, but it didn't, and you're dealing with it the best you can." Sloane pulled back enough to look at him. "How are you so calm about this?" "I'm not. I'm furious that they're treating you like you committed a crime. I'm terrified that this is going to blow up both our lives. I'm worried about what it means for Oliver when his friend's parents start talking. But falling apart won't fix any of that, so I'm just getting through the next hour, then the next. That's all I know how to do." "That's all any of us know how to do," Sloane said quietly. The board meeting started at 10. Sloane left at 9:30, dressed in her full armor again, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She looked untouchable, but Ethan had watched her hands shake while she put on her earrings. He kissed her before she left. "Call me when it's over." "What if it goes badly?" "Then call me anyway. I'll still be here." After she left, Ethan tried to work. Failed spectacularly. His email inbox had exploded with messages from coworkers, some supportive, most just curious. He ignored all of them. At 10:47, his brother called. Ethan answered. "Hey?" "So you're dating a billionaire CEO," Marcus said without preamble. "That's what we're doing now?" "Apparently." "Mom's losing her mind. She called me at 6 this morning asking if I knew. I told her to call you." "She did. 3 times. I didn't answer." "Probably smart. She's in full interrogation mode." Marcus paused. "So is it serious? The article made it sound like some kind of corporate scandal." "It's serious. And it's not a scandal. We met, we fell in love, we're trying to build something real. The fact that she's technically my boss is complicated, but we're handling it." "By going public?" "By not hiding." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Good for you, honestly. After Sarah died, I thought you were going to disappear into that grief forever. It's good to hear you sound alive again." "Thanks. I think." "How's Oliver handling it?" "Better than the adults. He asked if we were breaking up. I said no, and he went back to caring about important things like whether dinosaurs could swim." Marcus laughed. Kid's got his priorities straight. They talked for a few more minutes, Marcus asking questions that Ethan mostly couldn't answer because he didn't know what came next. Eventually, his brother had to go, and Ethan was alone again with his phone and his anxiety. The call from Sloane came at 12:15. "How bad?" Ethan asked immediately. "Bad?" Her voice sounded hollow. They want me to resign, effective immediately. They've already drafted a press release saying I'm stepping down due to personal reasons and a desire to pursue other opportunities. Can they force you out? Technically, no, but they can make my life hell if I stay. Constant scrutiny, second-guessing every decision, using this as ammunition against any initiative I support. They made it very clear that my credibility is shot. What did you say? I told them I'd give them an answer by end of day tomorrow. I need time to think. Come home, Ethan said, then realized what he'd said. I mean, come here, to the apartment, whatever you want to call it. Home sounds good, Sloane said quietly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived looking exhausted, not the broken way she'd looked that first morning, but worn down, like she'd been fighting a battle she couldn't win. Ethan made her sit on the couch, brought her tea, and waited. They had a whole presentation prepared, Sloane said eventually. Charts showing how my erratic behavior over the past 6 months has correlated with declining stock performance. Data on employee morale surveys suggesting people are confused by my softness. Quotes from competitors saying, I've lost my edge. She laughed bitterly. They weren't wrong. I have lost my edge. I just didn't realize they'd been documenting it so thoroughly. That's not erratic behavior. That's you remembering how to be human. To them, it's the same thing. And the relationship with you is the smoking gun. Proof that I've prioritized personal fulfillment over corporate success, that I've compromised my judgment, that I'm no longer fit to lead. Do you believe that? No. But I also cannot deny that I'm different. I'm softer. I do care less about market share and more about whether I'm home for dinner. I have prioritized personal fulfillment, and maybe that does make me unfit to lead a company that demands everything. Or maybe it makes the company unfit for you. Sloane looked at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of watching people destroy themselves for jobs that don't care if they live or die. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Inside, everything felt suspended. What do you want to do? Ethan asked. I want to tell them to shove their resignation up their collective ass and walk out with my head high. So do that. It's not that simple. There's stock options, severance packages, non-compete clauses. If I resign versus being forced out, the financial implications are completely different. How different? Sloane named a number that made Ethan's stomach drop. That's enough to live on for years. Or enough to lose if I play this wrong. What does your lawyer say? I haven't called her yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Ethan took her hand. Then here's what I think. You've given that company 20 years. You've made them billions. You've sacrificed relationships, health, happiness, everything. They owe you that severance package. They owe you a graceful exit. And if they're trying to bully you into leaving without it, then you fight. Not because you need the money, but because you deserve to leave on your terms. That could take months. Legal battles, negotiations, PR nightmares. So it takes months. We've got time. You say that like it's easy. It won't be easy. But you didn't come this far just to let them write the ending. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired of fighting. Then let me fight with you. You don't have to do this alone anymore. She collapsed against him, and Ethan held her while she cried. Not the desperate tears from that first morning, but something deeper. Grief for the life she was leaving behind, relief that she was finally leaving it, fear of what came next. When Oliver got home from school, he found them still on the couch. Sloane had cried herself out and fallen asleep against Ethan's shoulder. Ethan had one arm around her, the other holding a book he'd been trying to read. Is Sloane sick? Oliver whispered. Just tired, Ethan whispered back. Should we be quiet? Probably. Oliver nodded seriously and tiptoed to his room with exaggerated care. 10 minutes later, he tiptoed back out with a blanket and draped it over Sloane with the focused concentration of a surgeon. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Oliver climbed onto the chair across from the couch and pulled out his homework. For the next hour, they existed in peaceful silence. Ethan reading, Oliver working on math problems, Sloane sleeping. At 5:30, Sloane woke up disoriented. What time is it? 5:30, Ethan said. I slept for 5 hours? You needed it. She sat up, saw Oliver at the table, and her expression softened. Hey, kiddo. Hi, are you feeling better? Yeah, much better. Good. Dad said you were tired from fighting. Sloane glanced at Ethan. He did he? Yep. He said sometimes grown-ups have to fight about boring stuff like jobs and money. That's pretty accurate. Did you win? I don't know yet. Still fighting. Oliver considered this. My teacher says winning isn't as important as trying your best. Your teacher sounds smart. She is. She has a hamster in the classroom and she lets us name it. That's very smart. Sloane laughed, and it sounded more real than it had in hours. They had dinner together, the three of them. Pasta with sauce from a jar because nobody had energy for anything complicated. Oliver chattered about his day, about the hamster whose name was apparently Sparkle Thunder, about a game at recess that involved dragons and rules that made no sense. Normal. Mundane. Perfect. After Oliver was in bed, Sloane and Ethan sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open between them. Okay, Sloane said, let's figure this out. They spent 3 hours going through her options, called her lawyer, who outlined the legal landscape in terms that made Ethan's head hurt, called her financial advisor, who ran numbers on different scenarios. By 11 p.m., they had a plan. Sloane would resign, but with conditions. Full severance package, stock options vested immediately, and a neutral public statement that didn't assign blame. In exchange, she'd agree to a non-compete clause that kept her out of the industry for 2 years. 2 years is a long time, Ethan said. 2 years is nothing. I've given them 20. I can spare 2 more to be free. What will you do? I have no idea. And that's the most exciting thing I've felt in decades. The negotiations took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lawyers and counteroffers and tense phone calls. 3 weeks of Sloane sleeping at Ethan's apartment more nights than not, her presence becoming so natural that Oliver started setting 3 places at the table without being asked. 3 weeks of the press having a field day. More photos appeared. Sloane at the grocery store with Ethan, the two of them at a park with Oliver. Candid shots that painted a picture of domesticity that the business world couldn't reconcile with the ruthless CEO they thought they knew. The think pieces were endless. The downfall of Sloane Carrington. When CEOs choose love over leadership. The cost of going soft in a hard industry. Sloane stopped reading them after the first week. They're not writing about me, she said. They're writing about whoever they need me to be to make their point. I don't have to carry that anymore. Ethan's coworkers were more subtle, but no less curious. Meetings got awkward when he walked in. Conversations stopped. People asked questions disguised as concern. Morrison called him in one afternoon. How are you holding up? His manager asked. I'm fine. The attention must be difficult. It's annoying, but it's temporary. People will find something else to talk about. Morrison nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with a lot of grace. Both of you are. Thanks. But I need to ask, are you planning to leave, follow her to whatever comes next? Ethan hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know. Should I be? No. But people are speculating. I wanted to hear it from you. I like my job. I like the flexibility we worked out. I don't have any plans to leave unless something changes. Fair enough. Morrison paused. And if she starts something new, if she needs people, then I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. On April 3rd, Sloane signed the papers. She walked out of the Carrington Dynamics headquarters for the last time as CEO, and Ethan was waiting on the sidewalk. How does it feel? He asked. Like jumping off a cliff. Are you falling or flying? Ask me in 6 months. They went home. Sloane changed out of her suit and into jeans and one of Ethan's old sweaters. They picked up Oliver from school together, made dinner, did homework, gave Oliver a bath, read him a story. All the small, ordinary tasks that made up a life. After Oliver was asleep, they sat on the couch, Sloane's head on Ethan's shoulder. What now? She asked. Now you breathe, you rest, you figure out who you are when you're not performing. That sounds terrifying. It is. But you're good at terrifying things. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to do something that matters. Not in the corporate sense. I don't care about market share or disruption or any of that anymore. I want to help people. People like me who got so lost in the climb that they forgot why they started. Like what? I don't know yet. Consulting maybe, coaching, something where I can use what I learned but not have to be that person anymore. She sat up, turned to face him. Does that sound crazy? No, it sounds like you. You don't even know who that is yet. Sure I do. You're someone who shows up, who keeps promises, who loves hard when you let yourself, who's learning how to be soft after a lifetime of being sharp. That's who you are. Everything else is just details. Sloane kissed him, and it felt different than before. Not desperate or uncertain, but grounded. Real. Move in with me, Ethan said when they broke apart. Sloane blinked. What? Move in. Officially. Stop pretending you're just visiting. Bring your stuff. Take up space. Be here. This apartment is barely big enough for you and Oliver. So we'll get a bigger place. Together. You want to move? I want to build something with you. An actual life, not just stolen mornings and borrowed time. I want to wake up next to you and know you're staying. I want Oliver to have stability, not confusion about where you'll be tomorrow. That's a big step. I know, but I'm ready if you are. Sloane looked around the apartment, at the photos on the shelf, the toys in the corner, the life that Ethan had built here with Oliver, a life that had room for her now. Okay, she said. Okay, let's do it. Let's find a place. Let's build something real. Ethan grinned. Yeah? Yeah. But I'm picking the neighborhood. Your taste in real estate is questionable. I live in a 2-bedroom walk-up. Exactly. They spent the next month house hunting. It was harder than either expected because they had different criteria. Sloane wanted space and light and proximity to cultural centers. Ethan wanted good schools and a backyard and reasonable property taxes. Oliver wanted a house with at least 3 secret hiding spots and wouldn't budge on that requirement. They found it in early May. A 3-bedroom bungalow in Lincoln Park, old enough to have character but updated enough to be livable. Hardwood floors, a real kitchen, a yard with an actual tree. Walking distance to a good elementary school, close enough to downtown that Sloane could get anywhere she needed to be, far enough out that it felt like a neighborhood. It was expensive. Not by Sloane's standards, but well beyond what Ethan could have afforded alone. We'll split it, Sloane said when they were reviewing the offer. That's not even close to fair. You're putting down 10 times what I can. So, we're building this together. Fair doesn't mean equal. Sloane, Ethan, I have more money than I'll ever need. You have a kid and a part-time job and student loans. Let me do this. Let me invest in us. He wanted to argue, wanted to insist on keeping things separate, maintaining independence, not becoming the guy who lived off his girlfriend's wealth. But she was right. Fair didn't mean equal. Okay, he said, but I'm paying for groceries. Deal. They closed on the house in June, spent 2 weeks painting and unpacking and arguing about furniture placement. Oliver claimed the bedroom with the window seat and immediately designated it as secret hiding spot number 1. Sloane's belongings arrived in waves. Boxes from her penthouse that she'd apparently never unpacked in the 5 years she'd lived there. Furniture she'd forgotten she owned. A life in storage, finally finding a place to exist. The first night in the new house, they ordered pizza because the kitchen was still half-packed. Sat on the floor eating from paper plates while Oliver ran circles around them, high on the excitement of a new space. This is real, Sloane said, looking around at the chaos. Yeah, Ethan agreed. We really did this. We really did. Are you happy? Are you? I asked first. Ethan looked at her. At this woman who'd knocked on his door 6 months ago looking like her world was ending, who'd slowly become part of his world instead. Who made coffee wrong but drank it anyway. Who listened to Oliver's rambling stories with genuine interest. Who'd given up an empire for the chance to be ordinary. Yeah, he said. I'm happy. Me too. Oliver crashed between them, sprawling across both their laps. This house is the best, he announced. We should live here forever. That's the plan, buddy, Ethan said. Good. Can I have another piece of pizza? You've already had 3. But I'm still growing. You said growing kids need nutrition. I don't think pizza counts as nutrition. It has cheese. Cheese is nutrition. Sloane laughed. He's got you there. Ethan sighed and handed Oliver another slice. The kid grinned and ran off to eat it while exploring. You're a terrible influence, Ethan told Sloane. I'm learning from the best. They sat there on the floor of their new house, surrounded by boxes and possibility, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't felt since before Sarah died. Home. Not the place, not the address or the rooms or the mortgage. Just this. This feeling of being exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly who he was supposed to be with. The summer passed in a blur of settling in. Sloane started working with a career coach, exploring what came next. She had coffee meetings with people in the nonprofit sector, attended workshops on leadership development, slowly built a vision of what her second act might look like. Ethan went back to his part-time schedule, found he was better at his job with the breathing room, picked up some freelance consulting on the side, projects that interested him instead of just paid the bills. Oliver started summer camp and came home every day with elaborate stories about activities that may or may not have actually happened. It was hard to tell. They became a family. Not overnight, not in some dramatic moment of realization, just gradually, through the accumulation of shared meals and inside jokes and the comfortable rhythm of people learning how to exist together. In early August, Sloane's lawyer called with news. The full board had voted to approve a public statement acknowledging her contributions to the company and wishing her well. Not the neutral statement they'd originally negotiated, but something warmer, almost apologetic. "They're covering their asses," Sloane said after hanging up. "Stock price has been down since I left. They're trying to repair the narrative." "Does it matter?" Ethan asked. "Not really, but it's nice to have them acknowledge I wasn't the problem." "You were never the problem." "No, but it took losing everything to figure that out." That night, after Oliver was asleep, they sat on the back porch watching fireflies in the yard. Sloane had her feet tucked under her, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous." She smiled. "I want to start something. A consulting practice focused on executive transition, helping people who are where I was, successful on paper, dying inside, figure out how to make a change without destroying their lives." "That sounds perfect for you." "You think?" "I think you've got about 20 years of experience in what not to do, and 6 months of experience in what actually works. That's valuable." "It won't make me rich." "You're already rich." "It won't be prestigious." "You've had prestigious. How'd that work out?" Sloane laughed. "Fair point." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared I'll fail. That I'll build this thing and nobody will care. That I'm not actually good at anything except corporate warfare. Then you'll fail, and you'll try something else. And you'll keep trying until you find what fits. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible. That's enough." Sloane leaned her head on his shoulder. "How did I get so lucky?" "You knocked on a door at 5 in the morning. I opened it. Everything else was just showing up." "Just showing up," Sloane repeated. "I like that." They sat there until the fireflies faded and the temperature dropped enough that even Sloane's stubborn refusal to go inside had to yield to practical reality. Inside, the house was quiet. Oliver asleep in his room, the dishwasher humming through its cycle, all the small sounds of a life being lived. Ethan locked the back door and found Sloane waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "Come to bed," she said. It wasn't a question or an invitation, just a statement of fact. This was their life now, their house, their family. Ethan followed her upstairs, and somewhere in the ordinary act of getting ready for bed, brushing teeth, setting alarms, arguing about whether the window should be open, he realized this was it. This was the thing he'd been afraid he'd never have again after Sarah died. Not the same thing. Not a replacement, but something new and real and worth showing up for. Sloane climbed into bed and immediately stole most of the blanket. Ethan stole it back. She laughed and settled against him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "Opening the door, letting me stay. Not giving up on me when I was a mess." "You were never a mess. You were just human." "Same thing sometimes." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "Wookie, same thing." They fell asleep tangled together, and outside the window, the city hummed on, indifferent to the small miracle happening in this house on this ordinary street. Two people who'd been lost finding each other, a kid getting a family that looked nothing like the traditional model but worked anyway. A life being built from the wreckage of old ones. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was enough. The first real test came in September, 3 months after they'd moved into the house. Oliver's school had a parent-teacher night, the kind where you sat in tiny chairs designed for 6-year-olds and pretended your knees didn't hurt. Ethan had been to dozens of these. They were routine. Unremarkable. Except this time, Sloane wanted to come. You don't have to, Ethan said when she mentioned it over breakfast. It's usually pretty boring. Mrs. Patterson talks about curriculum standards and shows us finger paintings. I want to be there, Sloane insisted. I want to know what's happening in Oliver's life. I want to be the kind of person who shows up to parent-teacher nights. Oliver looked up from his cereal. Are you my parent now? The question hung in the air like a live wire. Sloane went very still. Ethan could see her processing, trying to find the right answer that wouldn't promise too much or hurt too little. I'm not your mom, Sloane said carefully. Nobody can be that. But I'm someone who loves you and wants to be part of your life. If that's okay with you. Oliver considered this with the seriousness he brought to all important matters. Like a bonus parent. Yeah, like that. Cool. Tyler has 2 bonus parents because his mom and dad both have new partners. He says it means more birthday presents. Ethan choked on his coffee. Sloane's eyes went wide. That's not really how it works, buddy, Ethan managed. But I could still get more presents, right? We'll discuss your mercenary approach to family structure later. Oliver shrugged, accepting defeat, and went back to his cereal. But the question lingered after he left for school. Sloane stood at the kitchen counter, staring at her coffee like it held answers. I overstepped, she said quietly. I shouldn't have said I love him. That's not my place. Do you love him? Of course I do. How could I not? But saying it out loud, claiming that space, Sloane, look at me. She turned, and Ethan saw the fear there. The old fear, the one that had brought her to his door 9 months ago, just wearing a different face. You didn't overstep, Ethan said. You told the truth, and Oliver's okay with it. More than okay. He just wants to know where he stands, and you gave him that. What about Sarah? What about his real mom? Sarah's dead. She's been dead for 4 years. And yeah, Oliver remembers her, and we talk about her, and she'll always be his mom. But loving you doesn't erase that. It's not a competition. It feels like one sometimes, because you're scared. You're scared of taking up space you think belongs to someone else. But Sarah would want Oliver to be loved. She'd want him to have people in his corner. She wouldn't want him to have a hole in his life where a mother should be just because she can't be here to fill it. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. You don't know that. I do. I knew her for 8 years. She was generous and kind and fiercely protective of the people she loved. She wouldn't begrudge Oliver having another person who cares about him. She'd be grateful. How can you be sure? Because when she was dying, one of the last things she said to me was, don't let him grow up lonely. Not, don't replace me, not keep my memory alive, just don't let him be lonely. She wanted him to have a full life. You're part of that now. Sloane turned away, wiping her eyes. This is harder than running a company. Yeah, but you're doing it anyway. They went to parent-teacher night together. The classroom was packed with parents, most of whom Ethan recognized from school pickup. A few did double takes when they saw Sloane, clearly recognizing her from the news coverage earlier in the year. Mrs. Patterson greeted them warmly. Mr. Hale, so good to see you, and you must be Sloane. Oliver talks about you constantly. He does? Sloane looked genuinely surprised. Oh yes, you're quite the hero in his eyes. Something about teaching him how to negotiate for extra dessert using strategic reasoning. Ethan shot Sloane a look. She had the grace to look sheepish. I may have helped him build a case for why fruit counts as dessert, Sloane admitted. Mrs. Patterson laughed. Well, his persuasive writing skills have certainly improved. They sat through the presentation about second-grade curriculum goals, looked at Oliver's artwork displayed on the walls, reviewed his progress reports, which showed he was doing fine in everything except sitting still during quiet time. That's genetic, Ethan muttered. Afterward, clusters of parents lingered in the hallway, chatting. Ethan started to steer them toward the exit, but one of the other mothers intercepted them. Ethan, hi. And you must be Sloane. The woman's smile was bright but didn't reach her eyes. I'm Jennifer. My son Tyler is in Oliver's class. The one with the bonus parents, Sloane said. Jennifer's smile faltered. Yes. She recovered quickly. I just wanted to say, it's so nice that Oliver has someone new in his life. It must be hard, being a single parent for so long. The implication hung there. Ethan felt Sloane tense beside him. It had its challenges, Ethan said evenly, but we managed. Of course. And now you have help. That must be such a relief. Sloane's not help, Ethan said, his voice hardening. She's family. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. Oh, I didn't mean, I just meant. I know what you meant, Sloane said, and her CEO voice was back, the one that could freeze a boardroom. You meant that you're wondering what someone like me is doing with someone like Ethan. You're wondering if it's real or if I'm slumming. You're wondering if I'm using him, or he's using me, or if this whole thing is some kind of publicity stunt. Jennifer went pale. I would never. Yes, you would. You did. And that's fine. People are curious. They're going to talk. But let me be very clear about something. Sloane stepped closer, and despite being several inches shorter than Jennifer, she suddenly seemed taller. Ethan is the best man I've ever met. He's kind and patient and genuine in a way that most people have forgotten how to be. I'm not doing him a favor by being here. He's doing me one by letting me stay. So if you want to gossip about us, go ahead. But don't you dare stand there and imply that I'm some kind of charity case slumming it with the single dad. Ethan touched Sloane's elbow gently. Hey, it's okay. It's not okay. I'm tired of people treating you like you're less than because you chose to be a good father instead of climbing some corporate ladder. I know, but we don't have to fight about it here. Sloane took a breath, visibly pulling herself back. You're right. I'm sorry. Jennifer had already fled. Several other parents were staring. Ethan guided Sloane toward the exit before the situation could escalate further. In the car, Sloane was rigid with anger. I shouldn't have done that, she said. Probably not. I made it worse. Now they'll all talk about how the CEO has a temper, how I'm unstable, how you're probably terrified of me. Sloane, stop. She stopped. Jennifer was being condescending and rude. You called her on it. Yeah, you could have been more diplomatic. But you weren't wrong. I was aggressive. You were protective. There's a difference. Sloane was quiet for a moment. I don't know how to do this. The corporate world has rules. I understood those rules. But this, parent politics, social dynamics, trying to fit into a community that doesn't know what to make of me, I don't know the rules here. There aren't rules, just people. Some of them will like you, some won't. Some will judge us no matter what we do. That's just how it is. How do you stand it? I don't care enough to let it bother me. You're learning how to do the same thing. They drove in silence for a while. When they pulled into the driveway, Sloane didn't immediately get out of the car. Oliver asked if I was his parent now, she said quietly. Yeah. What do you think about that? Ethan turned off the engine and shifted to face her. I think you've been acting like a parent for months now. You show up for him. You listen to him. You help with homework and make him laugh and tell him the truth, even when it's hard. That's what parents do. But we're not, Sloane gestured vaguely between them. We're not married. I have no legal standing. If something happened to you, I'd have no rights to him at all. Is that what you want? Legal standing? I want to know that if something goes wrong, I don't just disappear from his life. I want to know that I matter, that this isn't temporary. It's not temporary. You don't know that. People break up. Relationships end. What if... Sloane. Ethan took her hand. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. But if you need more certainty than that, then we can talk about what that looks like. Like what? Ethan's heart kicked hard. He hadn't planned this, hadn't thought it through, but suddenly the words were there, waiting. Like getting married, he said. Sloane froze. What? You heard me. You're not serious. Why not? Because we've been together less than a year, because we're still figuring this out, because you don't propose in a car in your driveway after a parent-teacher conference gone wrong. Why not? Ethan repeated. I love you. You love me. We're already living together, already building a life. We're already a family in every way that matters. Why not make it official? Because it's insane. Because people will say we're rushing. Because you're scared. Sloane pulled her hand back. Of course I'm scared. Marriage it's a legal contract. It's permanent. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I can't be what you need? What if it works? Ethan interrupted. What if we're happy? What if this thing we're building actually lasts? I don't have a good track record with commitment. You committed to a company for 20 years. That's different. How? Because the company couldn't leave me. It couldn't change its mind. It couldn't wake up one day and decide I wasn't enough. And there it was. The real fear. Not commitment itself, but the vulnerability that came with it. I'm not going to leave you. Ethan said quietly. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide you're not enough. You're more than enough. You've always been enough. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. You don't know that. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't promise the future. Nobody can. But I can promise today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. I can promise to keep showing up, keep choosing you, keep building this with you. That's all any marriage is, just two people promising to keep choosing each other. What about Oliver? Shouldn't he have a say in this? He asked if you were his parent. I think he's already voted. Sloane laughed through her tears. This is the worst proposal I've ever heard. Have you had others? No, but I've seen movies. There's usually candles, music, a plan. I've got a plan. Marry me. That's the whole plan. That's a terrible plan. Is it working? Sloane wiped her eyes. I don't know. Ask me again when I'm not emotionally compromised by parent politics and existential fear. Okay. Ethan leaned over and kissed her forehead. I'll ask again. They went inside. Oliver was in the living room with the babysitter, building something elaborate with Legos. He looked up when they entered. How was parent night? Educational, Ethan said. Did you see my art? We did. The spaceship was very impressive. It's not a spaceship, it's a time machine. My mistake. Oliver turned to Sloane. Did you like my art? I loved it. You're very talented. I know. Mrs. Patterson said I have creative vision. He said it like he was quoting something he didn't quite understand but enjoyed saying anyway. After the babysitter left and Oliver was in bed, Ethan and Sloane collapsed on the couch. I'm sorry about tonight, Sloane said. The Jennifer thing. Losing my temper. Stop apologizing for having feelings. I'm not used to it. For 20 years I trained myself to not react, to not show weakness, to never let them see me sweat. And now I'm out here getting defensive about parent-teacher conferences like I'm in high school. You're learning how to be human again. It's messy. I hate messy. I know, but you're doing it anyway. Sloane shifted to face him. Did you mean it? The marriage thing? Yeah. Even though I freaked out, especially because you freaked out, means you care enough to be scared. I do care. I care so much it terrifies me. I care about you and Oliver and this life we're building, and I don't know what I'd do if I lost it. Then don't lose it. Stay. Keep showing up. Keep choosing us. What if I mess it up? Then we'll figure it out, together. Sloane was quiet for a long time. Then, ask me again. What? The question. Ask me again. Ethan's heart started hammering. Now? Now. He shifted off the couch and knelt on the floor in front of her. It was ridiculous. His knees hurt. They were both in sweatpants. The house was a mess, but Sloane was looking at him like he'd hung the moon. Sloane Carrington, Ethan said. Will you marry me? Yes, she said immediately. Yes. Absolutely yes. Ethan kissed her, and she was laughing and crying at the same time, and somewhere in the back of his mind he registered that he should probably get a ring at some point. But right now, all that mattered was that she'd said yes. They stayed up until 2 a.m. talking about logistics. When to tell Oliver, when to tell their families, whether to have a wedding or just go to City Hall, whether to wait or do it soon. I don't want to wait, Sloane said. I've waited long enough for everything else in my life. I don't want to wait for this. Okay, so we don't wait. Your parents are going to think we're insane. They already think that. Might as well commit to it. They told Oliver the next morning over breakfast. Sloane and I are getting married, Ethan said, trying to sound casual. Oliver looked up from his cereal. Like married? Yeah. So she'll be my mom? Ethan glanced at Sloane. She looked terrified. She'll be your stepmom, Ethan said carefully, which means she's part of our family officially. Forever. Oliver processed this. Can I still call her Sloane? If that's what you want, Sloane said. What if I want to call you Mom sometimes? Sloane's breath caught. Then you can call me Mom. But not all the time, just sometimes. However you want, kiddo. Oliver nodded, satisfied. Okay, when's the wedding? We don't know yet. Can I wear a suit? Definitely. Can Sparkle Thunder come? The classroom hamster cannot come to the wedding. Why not? Because he's a hamster. That's discrimination. Sloane burst out laughing. Where did you learn that word? Tyler. His dads were talking about discrimination at work, and Tyler said it means when you don't let someone do something because of who they are. Sparkle Thunder can't help being a hamster. You make a fair point, Ethan conceded, but the hamster still can't come. Oliver sighed dramatically, but accepted defeat. They set the date for November. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. They'd get married in the park where Sloane had first walked with them to take Oliver to school. The place where she'd started remembering what it felt like to be part of something real. Ethan's parents flew in 2 weeks before the wedding. His mother took one look at Sloane and pulled her into a hug. "Thank you," she said. Sloane looked confused. "For what?" "For bringing him back. We thought we'd lost him after Sarah died. Not literally, but he was going through the motions. Surviving, not living. And then you showed up and he started laughing again. He started hoping again. So thank you." Sloane's eyes filled with tears. "He saved me too. More than he knows." Ethan's father was quieter, more reserved. But at dinner that night, he pulled Ethan aside. "She's good for you," he said. "I know. Different from Sarah, but good." "Yeah. You're happy?" "I am." His father nodded. "Good. That's all that matters." Sloane's family was harder. Her mother came to visit, a thin woman with Sloane's cheekbones and none of her warmth. She walked through the house like she was appraising it for market value. "It's smaller than I expected," she said. "It's enough for us," Sloane replied. "And this is what you want? Playing house with a man you barely know?" "I've known him for almost a year, and I'm not playing house. I'm building a life." Her mother looked around the kitchen, at the drawings on the fridge, the mismatched coffee mugs, the chaos of normal family life. "You gave up everything for this," she said. "No. I gave up everything for a title that didn't mean anything. This actually matters." "Does it? Or are you just running from responsibility?" Sloane's jaw tightened. "I ran a billion-dollar company for 20 years. I think I understand responsibility. And now you're going to be a housewife. I'm going to be a wife and a stepmom. And I'm starting a consulting practice helping other executives transition. I'm not disappearing into domesticity. I'm choosing a different kind of life." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "I don't understand you anymore." "I don't think you ever did," Sloane said quietly. Her mother left the next morning without saying goodbye. Sloane cried for an hour, then pulled herself together and went back to wedding planning like nothing had happened. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "No, but I will be. You don't have to invite her to the wedding if you don't want to." "She's my mother. Of course she's invited. Whether she comes is up to her." She didn't come. Sent a card with a check inside, like Sloane was graduating college instead of getting married. Sloane threw the check away and kept the card, though Ethan couldn't imagine why. The wedding was on a Saturday in mid-November, one of those clear, cold days where the sky is so blue it almost hurts. They'd rented a small pavilion in the park, decorated it with simple white flowers and string lights. Oliver wore a suit and took his job as ring bearer with extreme seriousness. Ethan's brother stood as best man. Sloane's old assistant from Carrington Dynamics came as her maid of honor, one of the few people from that part of her life who'd stayed in touch. The ceremony was short. No religious elements, no traditional vows. Just words they'd written themselves about choosing each other, about building something real, about promising to keep showing up even when it was hard. When Ethan slipped the ring on Sloane's finger, his hand was shaking. When Sloane slipped the ring on his, she was crying. When the officiant said they could kiss, Oliver cheered loud enough that several people laughed. The reception was in a restaurant nearby. Nothing fancy, just good food and better company. Speeches were given. Embarrassing stories were shared. Someone played music on a portable speaker, and people danced despite the lack of a proper dance floor. Oliver fell asleep in a chair by 9, exhausted from excitement. Sloane and Ethan snuck outside for a moment of quiet, standing in the same park where this had all started. "We did it," Sloane said. "Yeah. We're married. Apparently. You have regrets yet?" "Ask me in 50 years. Sloane laughed and leaned against him. "I never thought I'd have this. A wedding, a family. Someone who knows all my worst parts and chooses me anyway." "Your worst parts aren't that bad. You haven't seen me try to assemble IKEA furniture yet." "Fair point. I might regret this by tomorrow. She elbowed him gently, and they stood there watching the lights through the pavilion windows, listening to the muffled sound of celebration. "Thank you," Sloane said quietly. "For what?" "Opening the door. That first morning. You could have turned me away. You probably should have, but you didn't. Best decision I ever made." "Even better than the time you decided to adopt Oliver?" "Different category, but yeah." They went back inside to their celebration, to their family, to their life. And if Sloane held on to Ethan's hand a little too tight, like she was afraid he might disappear, he understood. He held on just as tight. Later that night, after everyone had left and Oliver was tucked into bed at Ethan's parents' place, Sloane and Ethan stood in their empty house. "This is it," Sloane said. "We're married. We're a family. This is real." "This was always real." "I know, but now it's official. Now I'm not just the woman who showed up one day. I'm your wife. I'm Oliver's stepmom. I'm part of this permanently." "You always were. The marriage just gave you the paperwork to prove it." Sloane smiled. "I like having the paperwork." "Of course you do. You're a CEO. Former CEO. Same impulse." They went to bed in their house, in their life, married and messy and more certain than uncertain. And if the road ahead was still full of unknowns, at least they were facing it together. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The first year of marriage wasn't what either of them expected. Not worse, just different. Harder in some ways, easier in others. The hard parts surprised them both. Small things mostly, how Sloane couldn't stand dishes left in the sink overnight, how Ethan needed absolute silence in the morning before coffee, how they both had strong opinions about the correct way to load a dishwasher. Stupid things that shouldn't have mattered but somehow did when you were learning to share space with another person's habits. The easy parts surprised them more. How naturally they fell into routines. How Sloane started cooking on weekends, terrible at first but improving with stubborn determination. How Ethan didn't mind that she worked late some nights because her consulting practice was taking off. How Oliver adjusted to calling her mom about half the time and Sloane the other half, and how that felt right instead of confusing. By spring, Sloane's business had 3 employees and a waiting list of executives looking for help, transitioning out of corporate life. She'd found her thing, the work that mattered, the contribution that felt real. She came home energized instead of drained, excited to talk about her clients' breakthroughs instead of stressed about board politics. Ethan had picked up enough freelance work that he'd gone fully independent, leaving Carrington Dynamics entirely. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Some months were lean, others were flush. They learned to budget, to plan, to support each other through the uncertainty. Oliver turned 7 and lost 2 teeth in the same week. He started playing soccer, badly but enthusiastically. He made friends with a kid named Marcus who had 2 moms and thought Oliver's family setup was boring by comparison. "Marcus has 4 parents if you count the bonus ones," Oliver reported one day. "I only have 2. That's like the minimum." "Sorry we're so conventional," Ethan said. "It's okay. Quality over quantity, right?" Sloane had laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee. But the real test came in June, almost exactly a year after the wedding. Ethan's phone rang at 3 a.m. He fumbled for it in the dark, saw his brother's name on the screen, and knew immediately something was wrong. "Marcus?" "It's Dad." His brother's voice was tight. "Heart attack. He's in surgery now. You need to come." Ethan was out of bed and pulling on clothes before his brother finished the sentence. Sloane sat up, instantly alert. "What happened?" "My dad. Heart attack. I have to go." "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "I'm coming." They were on the road to Milwaukee within 30 minutes, Ethan driving too fast, hands tight on the wheel. Sloane sat beside him, quiet, occasionally reaching over to touch his arm. "He's going to be okay," she said once. "You don't know that." "No, but saying it out loud helps." Ethan didn't respond. His mind was spinning through worst-case scenarios, through regrets and unfinished conversations, through all the ways he'd taken his father's presence for granted. They reached the hospital at dawn. His mother was in the waiting room, small and pale. His brother paced nearby, phone pressed to his ear. His mother looked up when they entered. "They're still in surgery, 5 hours now." Ethan sat beside her and took her hand. It felt fragile, papery. When had his mother gotten old? Sloane disappeared and returned with coffee for everyone. Sat quietly in the corner, not intruding but present, supporting without demanding attention. The surgeon came out at 8:47. Ethan watched his face, trying to read the outcome before the words came. He made it through, the surgeon said. It was close. Significant damage to the heart muscle. He'll need extensive recovery and lifestyle changes. But he's alive. Ethan's mother started crying. His brother sagged against the wall. Ethan just sat there, trying to process the weight of almost losing someone and the relief of not. They saw his father 2 hours later, once he was moved to ICU. He looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors everywhere, but his eyes were open. "Hey, Dad," Ethan managed. "You drove all the way here," his father said, voice hoarse. "Of course I did. Told your mother not to call. Didn't want to worry you." "Too late for that?" His father's eyes found Sloane standing near the door. "You brought your wife." "I did." "Good. That's good." He closed his eyes, exhausted. "Don't waste time, Ethan. Life's too short." Simple words, the kind of thing people say after a health scare, but they hit Ethan like a physical blow. They stayed in Milwaukee for a week. Ethan's mother needed help managing the house, the medical bills, the endless stream of information from doctors. Sloane handled it with the efficiency of someone who'd spent 20 years managing complex situations. Made lists, organized paperwork, asked the questions Ethan's family was too overwhelmed to think of. Oliver stayed with Ethan's brother's family, bonding with his cousins and apparently deciding that cows were the best animals ever invented. On the fourth night, Ethan and Sloane sat on the porch of his parents' house, watching fireflies in the yard. "I keep thinking about what he said," Ethan admitted. "Don't waste time." "He's right. I know, but I've been so focused on building this life, on getting it right, that I haven't stopped to appreciate it. I haven't stopped to recognize how good it actually is." Sloane leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're always waiting for permission to be happy. Waiting until everything's perfect, until we've earned it, until we're sure it won't fall apart. But perfect never comes. And by the time we feel like we've earned it, sometimes it's too late." "When did you get so wise?" "I spent 20 years chasing perfect and ended up miserable. I learned the hard way." They sat in silence, watching the night settle around them. "I want another kid," Sloane said suddenly. Ethan turned to look at her. "What?" "I want to have a baby. With you. I know we haven't talked about it. I know I'm almost 40, and it might not even be possible, but I want to try." "You're serious?" "Completely. I love Oliver like he's my own, but I want to experience it from the beginning. I want to know what it feels like to create a life with someone I love. I want to give Oliver a sibling. She stopped. "I want more than I ever let myself want before." Ethan pulled her close. "Then let's try." "Really? Really, life's too short, right? Let's not waste time." They flew back to Chicago the next day. Ethan's father was stable, improving slowly, and his mother had help from neighbors and friends. They'd be okay. The conversation about having a baby opened something between them. A new level of commitment, a new dream to build together. It didn't happen right away. 3 months passed, then 6. Sloane started to worry that they'd waited too long, that her body wouldn't cooperate, that she'd sacrificed this too for a career that no longer mattered. "Maybe it's not meant to be," she said one night after another negative test. "Maybe it takes time," Ethan countered. "I'm 39. Time is the one thing I don't have." Then we look at other options. Adoption, fertility treatments, whatever you want to try. What if I can't do it? What if I finally want something real and my body won't let me have it? Ethan took her face in his hands. "Then we'll grieve that. And we'll figure out plan B, but we don't give up yet." In October, on a random Tuesday morning, Sloane took another test. She'd stopped telling Ethan when she was testing because the disappointment was harder when they both felt it. But this time, 2 lines appeared. She stared at the test for 5 full minutes, convinced she was seeing things. Took another test. Same result. She walked into the kitchen where Ethan was making breakfast and just held up the stick. He looked at it, looked at her, looked back at the test. "Is that—" "Yeah. Yeah." Ethan crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms. She was crying and laughing at the same time, and he was doing the same, and they stood there in their kitchen at 6:47 a.m., holding each other like they'd just won the lottery. Oliver wandered in, saw them crying, and panicked. "What's wrong? Why is everyone sad?" "We're not sad," Sloane managed. "We're happy." "Then why are you crying?" "Because sometimes happy feels the same as sad when it's big enough." Oliver processed this with the deep confusion of a 7-year-old. "Grown-ups are weird." "You're going to be a big brother," Ethan said. Oliver's eyes went huge. "Really? Really? When?" "In about 7 months. That's forever." "It'll go faster than you think." Oliver ran off to call his grandmother and tell her she was getting another grandchild. Ethan and Sloane stood in the kitchen, still holding the positive test, still trying to absorb this new reality. "We're having a baby," Sloane whispered. "We're having a baby," Ethan confirmed. "I'm terrified." "Me too." "Good. Let's be terrified together." The pregnancy was hard. Sloane was sick for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3, uncomfortable for the final stretch. She worked through it all with stubborn determination, but Ethan could see it taking a toll. "You don't have to prove anything," he told her during month 7 when she was trying to review a client proposal while fighting heartburn and swollen ankles. "I'm not proving anything. I'm just working." "You're working like someone who thinks stopping means failing." Sloane set down her laptop. "Maybe it does." "Sloane, I spent my entire adult life being the person who never slowed down, who never showed weakness, who kept going no matter what. I don't know how to be pregnant and vulnerable and need help. It feels like failing. It's not failing, it's being human. I'm not good at that yet." "You're better than you think." She went on maternity leave at 8 months, mostly because her doctor insisted. Spent the final weeks nesting with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. The nursery was repainted twice. Baby clothes were washed and organized by size. Books on infant care were read and highlighted and cross-referenced. "You're going to be a great mom," Ethan said, watching her fold tiny onesies for the 3rd time. "How do you know?" "Because you care this much about getting it right. Because you're willing to be scared. Because you show up even when it's hard." "What if I'm terrible at it? What if I can't bond with the baby? What if all those maternal instincts everyone talks about don't kick in and I'm just empty?" "Then we'll figure it out, together, same as everything else." Their daughter was born on a Thursday in May, 3 days before her due date. Labor was long and brutal, and Sloane screamed things at Ethan that he wisely pretended not to hear. But when they placed the baby on her chest, still wet and screaming, something in Sloane's face transformed. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." The baby stopped crying and looked at her with unfocused eyes, and Sloane started sobbing. "She's perfect," Sloane said through tears. "She's so perfect." "She is," Ethan agreed, his own eyes wet. They named her Sarah. Not to replace the Sarah they'd lost, but to honor her, to acknowledge that grief and joy could coexist, that new life could grow from old loss. Oliver met his sister 2 hours later, wide-eyed and nervous. "She's really small," he said. "You were that small once," Ethan told him. "No way." "Way." "Can I hold her?" Sloane looked at Ethan, uncertain. He nodded. Oliver sat in the hospital chair, arms carefully positioned. They placed baby Sarah in his lap, supporting her head. He stared down at her like she was made of glass. "Hi, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you stuff. Important stuff, like how to negotiate for extra dessert and why dinosaurs are cool." The baby yawned. "She likes me," Oliver declared. "Of course she does," Sloane said, and the look on her face, pure love and contentment, was something Ethan wanted to remember forever. The first month home was chaos. Sloane struggled with breastfeeding, cried through the night wakings, doubted every decision. But Ethan watched her learn, watched her soften, watched her become exactly the mother she was terrified she couldn't be. Oliver was surprisingly helpful, fetching diapers and singing to Sarah when she cried. He took his big brother role seriously, appointing himself her official protector. By month 3, they'd found a rhythm. Imperfect, exhausting, but functional. Sloane's consulting practice went on pause. She'd planned to work from home, to maintain her business, to prove she could do both. But sitting in her office while Sarah slept, laptop open and ready, she realized she didn't want to. She wanted to be present, wanted to witness the small milestones, wanted to be the one Sarah reached for when she needed comfort. So she closed her practice. Not forever, just for now. Her employees could handle existing clients. New clients could wait. The decision should have felt like failure, like giving up, like becoming exactly the kind of woman who disappeared into motherhood. Instead, it felt like freedom. "I don't miss it," she told Ethan one night while Sarah slept on her chest. "The work, the schedule, the constant pressure to be productive. I thought I would, but I don't. You might later. Maybe. But right now, this is enough. She's enough." Summer turned to fall. Sarah started smiling, then giggling, then reaching for things with clumsy determination. Oliver started third grade and decided he wanted to be a paleontologist. Ethan's father recovered enough to visit, holding his new granddaughter with shaking hands and tears in his eyes. "You've built something good here," he told Ethan during that visit. "A real family, a real life." "Learn from the best," Ethan replied. In November, on a Friday evening, Sloane was giving Sarah a bath while Ethan made dinner, and Oliver did homework at the kitchen table. Normal. Ordinary. The kind of evening that would be completely forgettable, except that Sloane had learned to pay attention to these moments. She looked down at Sarah, splashing in the small tub, pure joy on her face. Looked through the doorway at Ethan stirring pasta, at Oliver chewing on his pencil while tackling math problems. 2 years ago, she'd been standing on a balcony at a corporate gala, unable to force herself back inside, unable to stand one more minute of the life she'd built. Lost and desperate and so profoundly alone. Now she was here, in a house full of noise and love and the beautiful chaos of family. It hit her with sudden clarity. This was the thing she'd been searching for her entire life. Not success or power or recognition, just this. People to love, people who loved her back. A place to belong. "Ethan," she called. "Yeah? Come here for a second." He appeared in the bathroom doorway, spatula still in hand. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." She looked up at him. "I need you to know something." "Okay. I'm happy. Not happy like I'm having a good day. Happy like this is my life and I don't want to be anywhere else or anyone else. I'm happy." Ethan smiled. "Good. Me too." "Me? I know I don't say it enough. I know I get caught up in the day-to-day stress and forget to step back and see how good we actually have it. But I'm saying it now. I'm happy. You make me happy. Our kids make me happy. This life makes me happy. You picked a weird time to have this revelation. I'm making spaghetti and the baby's covered in bubbles. That's exactly why I'm having it, because this," she gestured at the whole scene, "this is everything I never knew I wanted." Ethan set down the spatula and kissed her, quick and easy and full of certainty. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." Sarah splashed water on both of them. They laughed and went back to the evening routine, and it was perfect precisely because it was so ordinary. That night, after both kids were asleep, Sloane and Ethan sat on the back porch with wine and the quiet that only came after bedtime. "Do you ever think about that first morning?" Sloane asked. "When I showed up at your door looking like a disaster?" "All the time." "Do you regret opening it?" "Not for a second. I was such a mess. I had no business dragging you into my crisis." "You didn't drag me anywhere. I invited you in." Sloane was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what I want to do next. With work, I mean, when I'm ready to go back. And I want to write a book about executive burnout and what it costs us, about the lies we tell ourselves about success, about finding the courage to walk away from something that's killing you even when everyone says you're crazy. You should do it. It'll be hard, vulnerable. People will judge. Let them. You say that like it's easy. It's not easy, but it's worth it. If it helps even one person make the choice you made, to choose life over performance, then it's worth the judgment." Sloane leaned against him. "When did you become so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who got lucky when a desperate CEO knocked on his door." "I'm the one who got lucky." "We both did." They sat there until the wine was gone and the temperature dropped enough that going inside made sense. The house was quiet, everyone sleeping. They checked on Oliver, who'd kicked off his blanket as usual. Checked on Sarah, who slept with her fists tucked under her chin. In their own bed, Sloane curled against Ethan's side. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. For letting me fall apart. For teaching me what it means to build a life instead of just maintaining an image. You taught me too. You taught me that it's okay to take risks, to want more, to let someone in again." They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of old lives and built something new from the pieces. The book took Sloane 2 years to write. She carved out time during naps and early mornings, fitting the words around the demands of parenting and living. It was hard and messy, and nothing like the efficient, controlled way she used to work. It was also the most honest thing she'd ever created. The book published when Sarah was 3 and Oliver was 10. It became a surprise bestseller, resonating with burned-out executives everywhere who recognized themselves in Sloane's story. She did a small book tour talking about the courage it takes to step away from success, about redefining what a meaningful life looks like, about the price we pay for perfection and whether it's ever actually worth it. At one event, a woman in the audience raised her hand during the Q&A. "I'm a VP at a tech company," she said. "I make good money, I'm respected, but I'm drowning, and everyone tells me I'm being dramatic, that I should be grateful. How did you know when it was time to leave?" Sloane thought about that first morning, about standing on the balcony, unable to go back inside, about knocking on Ethan's door at 5:03 a.m., desperate for something she couldn't name. "I knew when being successful felt worse than being nothing," she said, "when the thought of one more day performing made me want to disappear. But the real question isn't when to leave, it's what you're leaving for. If you're just running away, you'll end up in the same place with a different title. But if you're running toward something, toward a life that actually fits, toward people who matter, toward work that feels real, then you leave when you're ready to commit to that vision." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. After the event, she approached Sloane. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest, for admitting it was hard, for not pretending it was some easy choice." "It wasn't easy," Sloane agreed, "but it was right. And sometimes that's all you can ask for." On the drive home, Ethan asked how it went. "I think I helped someone today," Sloane said. "Really helped them, not in the corporate sense, in the human sense." "That's what you always wanted, isn't it? To do work that mattered." "Yeah, it is." One Saturday morning in early spring, almost 5 years to the day since Sloane had first knocked on Ethan's door, the whole family piled into the car for a trip to the park, the same park where they'd gotten married, where Sloane had first learned to be part of something real. Oliver was almost 11 now, all gangly limbs and terrible jokes. Sarah was 3.5, obsessed with butterflies and asking why about everything. They spread a blanket under the trees and had a picnic. Peanut butter sandwiches and apple slices and cookies that Sarah immediately got all over her face. "This is nice," Oliver said, lying on his back watching clouds. "It is," Sloane agreed. "Do you ever miss being the boss of everything?" Sloane glanced at Ethan, who was helping Sarah chase a butterfly. "No," she said honestly. "I was the boss of a lot of things, but I wasn't the boss of my own life. Now I am." "That's deep," Oliver said. "Is it? Yeah, I'm going to remember that for when I'm old." Sloane laughed. "I'm not that old." "You're like 40. That's pretty old." "Thanks, kid." Later, after the kids were playing on the swings, Ethan sat down next to Sloane on the blanket. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Just how different everything is from 5 years ago. How lost I was. How certain I was that I'd built the only life available to me. And now? Now I know there are infinite ways to build a life, and the best one is the one you actually want to live." Ethan took her hand. "Any regrets? About leaving the company?" "No. About how long it took me to leave, every day. But then I remember that if I'd left earlier, I wouldn't have been desperate enough to knock on your door. And I wouldn't have found this. So maybe the timing was exactly right. Everything happens for a reason? No, I don't believe that. Bad things happen for no reason all the time, but good things can come from bad circumstances if you're brave enough to let them." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their kids play, watching the world move around them. "I love you," Ethan said. I love you too. Think we'll make it? Long term? Forever?" "Yeah, I do." "How can you be sure?" Sloane smiled. "Because we already did the hard part. We already chose each other when it was risky and uncertain and potentially disastrous. Everything else is just showing up. That night, after the kids were asleep, Sloane found herself awake at 5:03 a.m. Old habits. She slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, started the coffee maker out of muscle memory. Ethan appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, hair sticking up, eyes still half closed. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how this is exactly when I used to knock on your door. 5:03. Every morning for months. I remember." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't answered? If you just ignored me?" "All the time. But you did knock. And I did answer. And here we are." "Here we are," Sloane repeated. They stood in the kitchen with their coffee, exactly like they had 5 years ago. Except now this was their kitchen, their house, their life. "It was worth it," Sloane said quietly. "Everything I gave up, everything I went through, it was worth it to get here." "I know. I need you to understand. I don't say it enough, but I need you to know. You saved me. That first morning, you saved my life." "You saved mine too. You reminded me that being safe isn't the same as being alive." They drank their coffee and watched the sunrise through the kitchen window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day. Another ordinary, beautiful day. Later that morning, Sarah would wake up demanding pancakes. Oliver would sleep until someone physically shook him awake. There would be breakfast chaos and lost shoes and the 1,000 small dramas of family life. But right now, in this quiet moment, it was just the two of them. Two people who'd been lost and found each other. Who'd built something real from nothing. Who'd learned that the bravest thing you can do is choose the life you actually want instead of the life you're supposed to want. The knock that had come at 5:03 a.m. 5 years ago hadn't been the beginning of chaos like Sloane had feared. It had been the beginning of home. And home, it turned out, wasn't a place or a title or an achievement. It was just this. People who knew your worst parts and loved you anyway. Mornings that started with coffee and conversation. Kids who made you laugh and drove you crazy in equal measure. A partner who showed up day after day, choosing you the same way you chose them. It was messy and imperfect and nothing like what either of them had planned. It was everything. "Come back to bed," Ethan said, taking her hand. "In a minute." "You okay?" "Yeah, just appreciating the view." "It's a kitchen. The view is a refrigerator." Sloane smiled. "Exactly." They finished their coffee and went back to bed. And somewhere between sleeping and waking, Sloane understood what she'd spent 40 years searching for. Not perfection, not success, not the approval of people who didn't know her. Just this, just exactly this. The ordinary magic of being loved, of loving back, of building a life that fit instead of forcing yourself to fit a life. The knock had changed everything. But the real transformation hadn't been the knock itself. It had been the choice to step through the door. To stay. To keep showing up even when it was scary. To choose presence over performance. Connection over control. Life over the illusion of having it all together. In the end, that was the only lesson that mattered. The only truth worth holding on to. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be brave enough to knock on the door, and then brave enough to walk through when it opens. Everything else is just details. The sun rose over Chicago, flooding the bedroom with light. Outside, the city was waking up. Inside, a family slept on, safe and whole, and exactly where they belonged. And that ordinary, imperfect, beautiful thing was enough. More than enough. It was everything.